All right, so let's see. This is the issue for today's meeting, and this is a list of issues that are either needs review or RTBC with the needs usability review tag. And the top three are Drupal core issues that are relatively active, last updated in the last month or so. And there's this old issue for Drop Zone JS, which hasn't been touched in more than a year, and the address checkout module, which is really old. Um, let's look at the top three.
The the
Um,
one the one on the top, Godot, requested a re-review on the 1st of January in the UX channel.
right. So let's look briefly at all three of these and then decide which one we want to focus on. So the most recently uh, updated issue is already RTBC. So for the sake of the recording, this is issue 3537624. Deleting filter formats may result in data loss. Um, I believe I'm the one who marked it RTBC some time ago. Yes, back in November. Um, and this is a data loss issue. It is a bug fix on some feature that was added in the last year or two, and someone just missed a step. Um, and and I guess if you delete a filter format, um, then instead of removing that filter um, as an option for fields, it can actually delete some fields, which is bad. And somewhere along the line, or in one of the comments on this issue, someone suggested, oh, maybe we should add some text so that people can see what the problem is. And I, I think we talked about this issue. We've talked about all three of these issues before. And we decided that that would be an enhancement that could be done in a separate issue. Um, and that is the only reason it was tagged for usability review, because someone made this suggestion and it was a usability change, and someone thought we should look at it. Um, and then towards the end of December, XJM posted this comment, number 37. Just reiterating for posterity, we do not defer usability reviews to follow-ups. Usability is a core gate and hard blocking. Very rarely we will grant an exception and temporarily defer gates to follow-ups to more quickly mitigate data loss or the like. In this case, though, user expectations about what should happen are deeply intertwined with what the user considers data loss versus intentional deletion, so it is an essential part of the issue. Um, and Godot is late, flagged this and asked us to re-review it. It's not clear to me that XJM is actually asking for further review. Um, and is it the usability review, which has already happened, that shouldn't be deferred, or is it the usability change?
I got the
Um,
impression from this that that was the review shouldn't be deferred.
Oh, and Pallavi Singh has joined the group. Welcome, Pallavi. Um, so I suggested that we look briefly at the three issues before deciding which one to focus on. Um, any comments on this before we move on?
My only thought was if this is a quick win, if we can just take a quick glance at it and realize that we've done a review already, we just need to remove the usability review. That might be a quick way to get on with this. I'm wondering if another minute or so just to kind of figure out whether or not we've already done the review might be worthwhile.
Okay, and I think that's actually the case. Should we move on to the next issue? Okay, media library. Well, it'll be easier if I first open up the issue in context. And for the sake of recording, this is issue 311630. Media library upload form should use source label and description. And I'm pretty sure we've looked at this in the past. Um, so let's see. But I haven't looked at it recently, and I don't remember what the open question was. Um, oh, I'm beginning to remember now. It's this help text after the um, file upload widget. And in the after screenshot, you can see the first line of that help text is example video description. So that's what the issue is about. Again, I'm pretty sure that we've looked at this and given a review, although it's possible that we looked at it and then failed to comment on the issue. I'm afraid that sometimes happens.
No, you've
Oh,
commented in, yeah, 49.
right. So that was back in June, and there's been some work on the issue since then. Um, so we could look through that and see what they've said in response to my comment. Anything more to say about this one, or should we go on to the third issue?
Happy to move on.
Okay. Uh, and this is issue 2704931. Provide Drupal root path on file system admin form. Um,
I think I've missed a few of these meetings, but I think the last one was the last time we discussed this.
okay.
In 42 and 44, there are the two reviews we did.
Thank you. So 42 was your comment, Ralph, in September, and 44 was mine in November. And there's been some further work, some further changes. A new screenshot. And I guess this looks like something that shows up on Hover. And this is sort of a challenging design question. We sort of want to give two pieces of information, how the path is set in settings.php, which is typically something like site's default files. And then we also want to give the absolute path, which is what's showing up in this white text on black background, starting with /var/www/html. And it's not easy to come up with a good way to show both pieces of information.
Yeah. One option would be, of course, to have a kind of this toggle to have a toggle at the top of page, show relative, show absolute, but maybe not. We don't need any new ideas, but using toggles to like similar to show or hide password to show or hide the absolute path. We
You
don't
could
have the
even
helpers, but
you could even have the toggle closer to it so that where it says site's default files, you toggle it and it becomes var dub dub ht blah blah blah. The whole path just extends out. I don't know how you would do that.
Right?
But the
Or another place we use a toggle is to hide or show weights. So if you don't like to use the click and drag, if you want to edit the weights manually, you can flip that toggle. Sorry, Ralph, go ahead.
But the question is also how to communicate that there is a toggle, because out of the blue, you don't click necessarily, like some of the link sites default files, and know that it will switch to the absolute path that way. You would need basically a sort of a button next to it, something like that.
Yes, you certainly need some sort of indicator that there's an option.
And then get a pop-up, something like that.
And Offer Shell has just joined the meeting. Hi, Offer. We've just finished looking at the three most recent issues that are either needs review or RTBC with the needs usability review tag. And which of these three shall we look at more closely? Anyone?
I don't really mind, but I think if the first two have been reviewed, we just need, if we can quickly kind of move on from them, maybe the third one's where to focus our attention on.
So the Drupal root path, the, the third one that we looked at.
Yeah.
That works for me. So let me see. Move this tab to the end of my window. I can share this link in the Zoom chat. This is the ngrok version of my local Drupal site, which is just plain 11.x.
That issue also needs a rebase, like the other one I've already written. It has the same error on cache clear.
Oh, and I haven't been paying attention to the Zoom chat. Okay, I don't think I want to worry about rebases during the meeting. But what I can do, I get the Zoom windows out of the way so I can see my login link. As usual, admin to log in. I can show what the page currently looks like in plain Drupal 11.x. So if you go to, let me get my toolbar, my preferred orientation. If you go to configuration, media, and then file system, um, this is the page that's affected by this issue. And things like the public file system path, typically cites default files. Um, the path for optimized assets, that's like aggregated and compressed CSS and JavaScript files, can be something different, but defaults to the public file system path. Private file system path, these are all exactly what is entered in settings.php. And the temporary directory in my installation is already an absolute path, but the others are not. So let's just see what the latest screenshot looks like. Zoom in on this. Ooh. So it starts off by adding the section at the top for the application root directory, which will always be an absolute path. The base URL is not affected by this. It's not a path, it's a URL.
I think there's a tab at the top if you scroll up a bit further. The file field path settings, is that? No, maybe it's not. Odd.
Angie, I've added another ngrok link. I've applied the merge request there, or checked out better.
Thank you. As usual, you can distinguish between Ralph's site and mine because I always install Umami, so we get the Umami icon, and Ralph's has the default Drupal. And then where's the login link?
On the menu
All
on
right.
top.
I know I could also just type into the address bar. And
Configuration.
configuration, media.
Media. File system.
I think they may have just reverted because remember we were having.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. Okay.
It shows up on hover.
Huh.
Where have you hovered?
So if I hover over one of these paths, like site's default files, do you see the absolute path showing up?
Yes.
White text on black. Okay, good.
Can, can you select it though? Was that not one of our issues last time? Was it you couldn't click on it and copy that path?
Right, I can certainly select the relative path, but I don't see any way to select the absolute path.
Just as a note, a side note, I'm using Safari, and when I'm hovering, I don't get that styling. I have a smaller font size and also not a dark background, but a light, light grayish background with dark text on it.
Well, our general approach is that we don't fight with the browser. Let's look at the markup. There's a span element. The absolute path is given as the title attribute. And the relative path is the text inside the span. And then I'm using Firefox, and this is how the title attribute is rendered in Firefox, and it, I guess, is different in Safari.
Yeah, just from a readability perspective, in Safari, it's super tiny and hard to read, and therefore I thought if you consider it an important information and it's not just a label, but basically another information like the absolute path, then it's more important to me and it should be readable and in a more controlled manner, to be honest. So, hmm.
How do you display that on a touch screen?
Yep, another problem.
Right. There is no hover event um, on touch devices. So let's have a look at the comments. Did we have a particular recommendation, or did we just say, ooh, we don't like this? Um, and I guess the approach has changed, so I'm not sure that these comments are relevant anymore. Um, and maybe I should scroll up and see the previous screenshot. So which of these two? So the previous screenshot added a second line, and I think we complained this made it harder to scan the information, and it may also have been difficult to select the text. So adding the bold label makes it harder to scan the page and see the primary headings. The markup uses small and B tags for accessibility. We should use more semantic tags. And there is no easy way to select the absolute path. And as opposed to the relative path, which you can select with a triple click. Um, so let's see, what did I say here at the bottom? Looking at the comments on this issue, it seems that the idea evolved from prefix the relative paths with Drupal root to show the absolute paths, to show both the configured paths and the absolute paths. No one ever gave a use case for showing the absolute paths. Comment 35 mentioned the actual location of specific stream wrappers. Can you say more about that? If it is something that comes up often, then it is worth some effort to add the information to the page. If it comes up rarely, then we can let the occasional user combine the root directory with the relative path. In short, 1, decide whether it's really worth adding the absolute paths to each entry. 2, depending on 1, either go back to the approach of comment number 21, or else come up with some more semantic accessible markup for the absolute paths. Um, and updated the merge request, gave the screenshot, simplified changes, removed new markup for absolute path resolution results, provided feedback in the UX channel. Here's an example of how a user can view the resolved absolute path. And you have to the screenshots.
Interesting that his screenshots from the iPad mini. I wonder how he got that to hover.
That's right. So the previous approach sort of violated the dictum less is more. The new approach, until you
Less
hover,
is less.
um, it adds the section at the top, which is sort of the minimal change expected for this issue. And until you hover, there aren't any other changes. So it doesn't make the scannability worse. You can't easily select things that you couldn't, or vice versa. Um, and the only thing it adds is this text on hover. So I'm inclined to say that it's an improvement. A different design might be even better, but I don't see any way that this makes the uh, the page harder to use.
Mhm.
But how many people will notice that hover, to be honest? Because first the point Simu made with basically on touch devices is the problem, but on the other way, it's not just the hover isn't triggered immediately, more or less, as soon as you hover over it, you have to remain with your mouse cursor for several seconds until it shows up. So I'm not sure how many people will notice it. 1, 2, 2 or 3 seconds on me, on my test. So
Yeah, I think that feeds into the point. It doesn't make it worse, but I don't think it makes it better.
yeah,
And that solution itself is pretty, yeah, like I said, useless because you can't select that text.
out of curiosity, are the developers of you, are you using the absolute pass regularly in certain contexts?
I certainly don't.
And
But
that's
then
exactly, go ahead.
I wouldn't go there to get the relative path either, though. Just know what it is. So
Okay.
And that's exactly what I asked here. No one ever gave a use case for showing the absolute paths. Um,
Because the point, if it would be useful, then instead of basically hovering or something like that, maybe a simple button with copy to clipboard for the absolute path would be more actionable. That way you would have it and you could reuse it. But yeah, if there is no purpose in the first place, then hmm, it's rather odd.
I remember one meeting where we were looking at the log messages for some reason, recent log messages. And there's a similar thing there. If you hover over this link, you get the full log message on hover. And XJM said, or maybe it was WebChick, that's how long ago this was, said, oh my God, I never noticed that feature. So I guess the point is that adding a feature, um, you know, without a clear indication that something will happen on hover isn't a bad thing. It might not be as as good as something that does indicate the affordance, but it's come up before. And again, I'll say this doesn't make it any worse. And if you do know that it's there, um, then I guess it makes it a little better. So do we want to insist on going back to the very simple edition where you just add this section at the top and make no further changes? Do we want to accept the current version as an incremental improvement, even though you can't select the absolute path and you might not even notice
No,
that it's there? Or do we want to come up with another suggestion for how to indicate it? I mean, it's sort of overkill, but I could imagine putting in a drop button next to this with two options: copy relative path, copy absolute path to clipboard.
or the other alternative is a drop down where it then drops down and shows you a block underneath with the relative with the absolute path. So it toggles open and closed that. It would keep it nice and clean for default. And if you wanted to see it, click here for absolute path. But yeah, I wouldn't push back on this for UX reasons, other than it's a useless addition, in my opinion. But it's not hampering anything by having it there.
Maybe one thing, maybe hover mouse over public file base URL. What does it show to you?
I'm sorry, hover the mouse over what?
A public file base URL.
I don't see anything there.
And
No, it's
then,
only if this.
yeah, the next one. And the next one. So there's a funny thing.
Huh.
It's not set, but it doesn't show the one that's actually URL. So it's a bit inconsistent.
And I take it doesn't show the temporary either, because that is the absolute path. Oh.
No.
There must be some JS logic to say if it starts with a / don't display it, maybe. Does the markup have the same markup?
I imagine that this just doesn't have a title attribute. And there is logic, but I'm pretty sure it's in PHP rather than in JavaScript.
And Benji, could you
Yes.
quickly test? Could you go to one of the titles, like private file system path, and hover over it? Yeah, and you get a pointer. That's another detail I just noticed.
So why is that? It's a label element, class form item underscore label. And let's see.
Is that just cut off there, or is that edit file temporary path? or is it in temporary path dash dash description?
I'm sorry, I was looking at my browser tools. What, could you repeat that?
The label, we've got the class form element label 4, edit file temporary path, and then there's that symbol there to indicate that it's been chopped.
No,
the
it's the
browser.
target. It's targeting basically
It's got the wrong target then, doesn't it? Edit
No.
file temporary path, and it should be. Oh, it's
No,
the
it's
div
pointing to
behind it.
the
Yeah.
dash temp.
This it's pointing
So
to the surrounding div.
let's use edit as HTML to see what is actually there. That icon was something added by developer tools. It's not in the markup.
Yeah, it's just the same.
But the edit file temporary path, I think that's because this is generated using the form API. So technically these are form elements, even though there's nothing editable in these elements.
So where's the /temp? Isn't that the label for the /temp bit?
Yep, I think so.
So it should be the ID edit file temporary path description. Or no, it's not. It's the
This is
no, it's the Drupal selector edit item.
right.
The span.
This is all done by the form API, and
Okay.
Yeah, I think
none of that is being changed by this issue.
I think here that like the confusing part is that the /tmp it's contained inside the div that contains also the label, but here what is added is that span maybe, or is that even added? So it's kind of the, if you compare it with that public file-based URL, the URL is inside the div element as well as the label. So
Okay,
that span.
but none of this has changed.
No.
You still get the pointer when you hover over the label. Yeah, again, this is coming from the form API. And this again is 11.x without the merge request applied. We still have the div with the ID edit file temporary path. The label is still 4 edit file temporary path. And the only change is that instead of the bare text /temp, it wraps that in the span, and then adds the title attribute.
Yeah.
And the data Drupal selector as well. Okay, so it wraps it in the span and adds the data Drupal selector, which doesn't seem to have much effect since it's not actually an editable form item. And not on temp, but on the others, it adds title attribute.
Just one question. What is the purpose of that data Drupal selector in the form?
If it were an input element rather than a span, then that would associate it with the label or edit item. I mean, further down, we do have some editable form elements. We have some checkboxes, and we have the same pattern that there's a div and its ID.
The ID's on the input.
You're right. we have the wrapping div, we have, as Garrett said, the ID attribute on the input element, and then the label is for that ID element. Edit file name sanitization transliterate. And I'm guessing that the form API, in the absence of an input element, sticks the ID attribute on the wrapping div rather than just leaving it off. Not entirely sure why, but that seems to be how it works. Go ahead.
And that is the reason why the pointer is then showing?
I believe so.
Okay.
I think I
Theme dependent. I can check on the background.
that certainly could be controlled by the theme. The theme could use different classes, or it could have a different CSS rule. Like here's the cursor pointer CSS rule. If I disable that, then
Mhm.
I don't get the pointer. So again, I think all of this is a digression that we're digging into the form API and the markup. I'd like to get back to the question of whether we should approve the current version of the merge request or say that we should go simpler and drop the other changes, and the only thing would be to add this section at the top, or whether we want to suggest something more functional, something that lets you select either the relative path or the absolute path. And still, no one has given me a reason why it's important to be able to select it. It's just, it would be nice if you could.
I've just checked another site alongside, and that pointer is also there without the patch, so it isn't introduced with it. So just as a note.
Right. This is plain 11.x, and we get the same thing.
Yeah. Hmm.
Personally, I guess I like the fact that the application root directory is there. Um, looking at that page, you would never ever guess that you could hover over any of those other ones. So I guess if you're in the know and you know it's there, nice for you. But I don't think anyone would notice. Yeah,
Okay, so
I wouldn't stop this going in like this with it. I'm just question why the work was done to put it there.
Personally, I'm not a fan of something implicit that is hidden and you have to know up front. So that would be my gripe, as well as the problem with the touch, as well as with it time shift until the hover shows. So I like the having the application root directory, but yeah, that absolute path on hover, I'm not completely sold on and rather reluctant, to be honest.
yeah, I wonder if you have some unusual setting on Safari. It certainly doesn't take me 2 seconds. If I move my cursor smoothly up and down the page, nothing comes up. But it takes less than a second after I move the cursor before it shows up, and I'll demonstrate. 1000. That was maybe half a second, maybe less.
I could quickly demonstrate on my end, but to me it looks like a while until
Oh,
it shows.
sure, go ahead.
1 second.
I think,
Took a while.
yes.
And that is a time frame I wouldn't wait, to be honest, if I don't know that there is something.
I'm on Mac. What I mean, Chrome, and it's I've got 1,000, 1,000. There we go. Yeah, it's a good 2 seconds.
Second, I quickly check in Firefox in combination. That's faster. And I could quickly look in Edge as well.
So I think I agree with Gareth that it doesn't hurt to have the title attribute.
It's like an Easter egg in a film. When you know it's there, you be, yay, I know this. It's a secret that I am privileged to be 1% of the population that knows that it's there. And I'm going to be hovering over my watchdog logs from now on as well. Maybe that's the
So,
next for the next DrupalCon quiz. What things in Drupal can you hover over to see more information?
so Gareth and I are in favor of approving the current version. Ralph doesn't like the idea of having
Secrets.
Yeah. Secrets are no good.
trying to remember what the usual terms are. There is an affordance you can hover over, but there's no indicator of the affordance. I forget what the
Yes.
usual term is.
Yeah, but it looks like a simple text string and not like, and you also have no feedback by the mouse cursor nor anything else. So
It doesn't work on touchscreen, and there's no way to select it, so it's useless other than just a visual representation of what it is.
Also, just checked with VoiceOver, and it just reads the like the relative path with my settings.
but the absolute is not announced.
No, not with my settings at least.
Second, I will quickly check.
So let me give an argument in favor of accepting the current version. And in the spirit of incremental improvements, if we do accept the merge request as it currently is, there is some logic in figuring out what the absolute path is and when to show it. And then if someone comes up with a better design, which could possibly be done at the theme level, um, then the work is already there to provide the information. So we're halfway there. Whereas if we just take the simple version of the patch that adds a section at the top and doesn't make any further changes, that'll make it harder for someone to implement a better design once they come up with a better design.
I find it a bit annoying to have that not set to work as hover title. So I think it's a bit confusing that is shown on hover, but the other ones are not. So I have a bit of a problem with the consistency because it doesn't make not set an absolute path, but it still shows it.
So we show it for these relative paths, and which one are you?
The
Oh,
private function path, which is not set. So I think that should be somehow tackled. So that's kind of weird.
Still technically under it is an improvement, but it needs follow-up work to kind of make this better.
Ralph, you have your hand up?
Yeah. I think the compromise from my perspective would be to get your initial question answered, Benji, in regards of the absolute path and the use case. And if it is there and it's justifiable, then go ahead. But in the current state, the longer I think about it, I'm not comfortable with it because, yeah, also with in regards of voiceover and just having an information on hover that is not accessible basically by touch as well as screen reader technologies. Not sure. And circling back to the other issue where XGM said the UX
Is it
what's the
core
name
gate?
for a core gate exactly? It's the same applies to accessibility, and that those are accessibility problems basically. And it should be accessible for everyone if it goes in, and it is not. So basically, it's also a blocker, strictly speaking.
So I guess just to take the other side of the argument I gave a couple of minutes ago, um, having that logic in there means that the code is more complicated, harder to maintain. And so if it's not meeting core gates, that's a strong argument in favor of removing that extra complication. So less is more is not only a good principle for design, but it's also a good principle for code maintainability.
Yep. And as Gathers has said, we basically have the information with the application root directory. And yeah, for example, the public file system path, and you could chop them together and you know the absolute path. So you have the necessary information at hand. And the other thing, providing it in a hover, raises the question, yeah, what's the core purpose, what's the need that is solving that should be answered first. And if it is a reasonable request, then yeah, it should be done properly. But yeah, adding the application root directory is a good thing in the first place. That is out of question.
Okay, so I wouldn't call this a strong consensus unless the people who haven't said much want to vote one way or the other. But I think we are leaning towards keeping it simple and not adding the title attributes. And there are only 5 minutes left in the hour. So unless there are further comments, do we have any volunteers to comment on the issue?
I can comment.
Okay,
But
thank
so
you.
basically our gist is um rather not to use the title attribute for so that is not the absolute path in the hover, and just keep it simple for now. Or get the question answered you've raised in the beginning if there is a strong case to edit.
I just took a look at the code, and it's showing the title on the not set. It looks like it with a quick glance. It looks like a code bug. It shouldn't fit the condition, but that's not our problem. But I think there might be something wrong with the code.
Which I guess agrees with the point about more complicated code being harder to maintain. Every time you try to add a feature, you're adding more opportunity for bugs. Okay, I guess that's it for this meeting. I will be here next week, but the 2 following weeks I have a scheduling conflict, so I won't be able to attend the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you all. Hope you can make it again next week.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, should make
Thank
it.
you. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.